and
oops.
Recording starts with me putting in a strange face because that woman shouts at me. Okay, so we'll make a start. So welcome everybody to this Relevance Researchers Network meeting. Today we have a presentation by Ryoko Sasamoto. She is Associate Professor in the School of Applied Language and Intercultural Studies at Dublin City University. Her research expertise is interdisciplinary. She works across different disciplines, including pragmatics, audiovisual translation, reception studies, and linguistics. She's particularly interested in the communication of emotions using onomatopoeia, emoji, and reaction gifs. And we're going to hear about some work today that develops and extends that work in a slightly different direction. So that's enough from me. I'll hand over to Ryoko.
Okay, thanks, Kate. So I'm gonna share screen here. Is it better to go this, maybe? Okay, so yeah, I have to get out of my habit of having very long title, but I'm going to talk about the live commentary and engagement and entertainment today. And well, let's start with the overview. So I will first explain the background, what Taxon screen is and how we engage with media. And I will raise some questions about shared viewing behavior. And then I will explain the direction of study and working with ideas from social cognition and possible explanation. Now, true to the spirit of this group, this is very much work in progress, or more like an idea in its infancy. So I would very much welcome your input and your suggestions as well. And I will end with sort of possible empirical work I might do with this work. So let's start with the background. Oops. Why is it not working? This is working. Right, so background, you may or may not have noticed, but in recent years, maybe especially since the pandemic, we share viewing experience more and more. By that, I mean, people do watch something together, but remotely as well. I will give you some example in a minute. And we are increasingly leading this multi-screen life. So you may or may not keep your phone in your hand while watching something. Okay, so we are always constantly navigating between more than one screen. And sometimes not only we look at two different screens, we may actually have two separate activities on one screen. And text on screen is now used as a performance prop as well. So this is the sort of background of why I am looking at this. And these are some of the examples. Okay, so here is the example of text on screen. Okay, and these pop-up captions, if you will, it's said to have started in Japan, and it is there it is called TELOP, that's television opaque projector. And that's more of a local term, but this TELOP or text on screen is spreading across the world, and now it is used globally. You can see the Japanese example on top right. Top left, we have Korean example. The middle one is, this is actually YouTube, Mr. Beast apparently, but it's American or English-speaking media. Bottom left, this is not variety show, this is from drama, slightly different. But the Sherlock, the BBC drama Sherlock, used the text on screen quite prevalently. Bottom right is the screen from India. This is their Indian news programs are crazy. They have so much writing on all over the screen. Sometimes it is very difficult to see what they're talking about. Okay, and as you see, we have this text on screen on drama, in variety show, chat show, and news program, basically across different genres. And what you notice is it is intralingual, not interlingual. So it's not sort of traditional subtitling. It is added for as an effect. And it is not designed as SDH, that is subtitles for deaf and hard of hearing. So in a way, it is kind of audiovisual translation in that it is multimodal translation of what's happening on screen in writing, but it is not used for accessibility. Okay. But here I'm not looking at SDH or accessibility subtitles, so that's fine. Okay. Now, as I said, the middle one is on YouTube and others are on traditional TV, so it is used across different media. Now, these are the ones on the same screen, but there are new way of doing text on screen by viewers. One of the example is what is called Danmaku or bullet titling. You have these two images here. The middle one, well, image on the right is this guy on TV, and it is very simple. You don't see much writing, but if you see one on the left, you will see a lot of writing. Okay, that's what the viewers are adding. I'm not looking into the actual comments itself, so I didn't bother translating them, but these are the comments by viewers. And this is, and if you look at what they're saying, it is full of internet slang. You see www written. That is Japanese youngsters expressing their laughter in Japan. Okay, so that way it is very, I don't speak that way. Youngsters don't speak that way in real life, but they write this way. So it's very much internet slang. And what they're writing is something very trivial, like, oh, he looks young. Or someplace they say, he says on this TV that I'm from certain area, say Adachi. Adachi, that is a name of the world. And they just say, oh, he is from such and such place. That's what they say and show on the screen. Okay. Now, so in this way, we have a lot of text on writing, but it's not all of them. But that's still very simple because sometimes we go that far. Okay, so you can't even see what's happening on screen, but this is some sort of newer way of using text on screen on Japanese media. Now, this is spreading into sort of live performance in that this is an image from the concert, and you can see at the backdrop, they are showing the lyrics of the song they're singing. And this works as prop because we are now so used to having the text on screen. Okay, but anyway, this is not what I'm looking at. What I wanted to show you is how text on screen is spreading across different areas of media. But now what we really have to think about is the rise of participation and participatory text on screen. Okay, by that I mean, hold on. So first examples I showed you, these are done by TV producers, but more these as well. But here I am now looking at participatory text on screen where viewers leave comments on often live streamed videos they are watching. This one is YouTube live of Liverpool Football Club press conference. Apologies to Kate, I don't mean to offend you at all. And if anything, it's not Liverpool, it'd be Burnley I'll be putting up. The only thing I found was Liverpool. Okay? Here, you can see on the right, there are viewers are leaving comments. This case is multilingual, so because it is YouTube, anyone can access from anywhere, so they can leave whatever the comments they like. Okay. And it can be synchronous or it can be asynchronous, meaning this video will be available after the press conference and viewers can still watch the video while read the comments. Okay. And as I said, we go this far in Japan. This is sort of a newer way of doing. Now, I have two screens there. They are actually exactly the same scene. What you're seeing is on the left, you have just normal screen without any viewer comments. On the right, you see the screen with viewer comments. Why do they do that? But before we say, just to clarify, what I am looking at in this study is participatory text on screen. It's not the ones added by the producers, but I am interested in viewers' interaction on TV between themselves. Okay? And I see this live commentary by viewers as part of shared viewing experience. Now, there are different ways to engage in media content. And yeah, that's one of them, but I'm not going to go too much into this. Other things I'm looking at is using the web forum. Sometimes people will set up a thread on, I don't know, some TV film broadcast on TV and so on, where they can chat about what they're watching. Sometimes they would use Twitter using hashtag. Top right, you have an image of Netflix party. You can set it up with Netflix so that people who are invited to the Netflix party can leave a comment to share with each other. Or as we had earlier, there's a YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Instagram Live, where they can broadcast while viewers can leave their comments. I am really interested in all of this, but I will show some more examples on Twitter and live streaming now, because I kind of want to understand, what are they talking about? What do they comment on? So I just checked a few things. And this is a kind of summary of what they say. They often express their feeling towards overall program, people on screen. They react to what they see, or they report what they see or hear on screen, or they might explain trivia they know from the screen, about the program, sorry. And they use a lot of emoji. So let's have a look what they're like. So this is a December 17th, Strictly Come Dancing. They use hashtag Strictly. It's a day before the final, I believe. Now it's the day before, and I think someone injured and had to pull out. So the story is very much, oh, I'm sorry that they had to pull out and so on. But you can see it is comment on what they are expecting. They're sorry that they can't do anymore and so on. Okay. So, and also you can see they are tagging BBC Strictly or people, or friends or whatever, and texts are quite long. But once we go into during the program, this is a Twitter feed while they are watching Strictly Come Dancing finale, should I say. And a lot of emojis, and it becomes very short. If you look at the left one on the left, yesterday, yes, so happy. Oh, yes, Rose and Giovanni, yay. It's very short and very interjection based, if you will, and lots of emoji. And you notice, unlike the before, there is a lot less tagging in during. So they don't even care who they are communicating with. What they do is just hashtag Strictly, and they say whatever they want to say while they are watching. And after that, it's quite similar. Again, lots of emojis, and it becomes a lot more wordy, if you will. They will start articulating. So, sorry, this is still during. No, after that. So this is after the program is finished. They become more articulate in what they want to say. This is especially the case on the image on the top right. You can see a paragraph even. Okay, I know. Okay, just the length of sort of comment doesn't really isn't the be or end of, but it actually kind of shows how they are writing more carefully, probably, than what they would have done during. Okay, so I found it very, very interesting. Now, so let's leave the strict behind. Let's move on to another different one. This is YouTube. Again, I'm not talking about exact examples. So I'm just going to show you what it is like. So the top image is from this YouTube live where they are talking about going to a virtual golf bar, and they spent too much money, so it went beyond the budget. On the comment, what I noticed is they actually don't say anything new. They are just repeating what's been said in the program, like virtual golfer, or their budget, or you went over budget, over budget, over budget. That's what they're saying in this chat. Bottom one is the scene they were showing in this the live image. And what they're saying on this comment is like, oh, wow, already, crap emoji, or amazing, cool, or, oh, that's in English, actually. So again, they don't really say that much. They repeat what's been said, it's interjections or it's emoji, very spontaneous response, not that much thought going in, if you will, okay? So that's what I found really, really interesting. So my question then was, what is this all about? So how do we explain this behavior? Why do we do this? And how do we explain this? So that's my big, big question. So let's go a little bit more theoretical. I think we have enough examples here. Oops, what's happening here? Sorry. So observation I've made is there are two separate but interrelated communicative situations happening, whether it is with one or two devices, okay? So viewers are engaging in processing the media contents. At the same time, they are interacting with fellow viewers, whether they know themselves or not, I don't know. So there are two communications they're engaging in. And they could use different screens. Anyway, sorry, what's happening here? Oops, right. And it's a little bit different to interruptions we normally have. It's like, say if I'm talking to someone, doorbell rings, that's a clear short case of interruption. But it is two different communicative situations. It's a bit different because what I'm saying here is two separate but synchronous activities, communication happening at the same time. And as I say here, can take place synchronously or asynchronously, because sometimes, not sometimes, almost always, these comments are left to be read by others after the event. So I can go back to the archive of these videos and still read the comment left by the viewers then. So I won't be part of the particular communication, but I still am kind of part of the communication. And I also observed some patterns of the way they speak. They repeat, quite short, quite expressive. And actually, in terms of the content, it's not that much. So the question, this has been discussed elsewhere, and especially in psychology. And what I find interesting is in previous studies in psychology and engagement, they say that sharing viewing experience or multitasking often result in reduced emotional response to the program contents due to decreased transportation into the narrative. And as a result, it causes decreased enjoyment. So in psychology, scholars are saying by multitasking, checking into two separate situations, we have less enjoyment. But I don't think they're talking about this particular case of shared viewing behavior, because if we don't enjoy as much, why do we even bother doing that? So what I'd like to ask is this. Media consumption is no longer just about engaging with media products. It can be, but a lot of the time, it became beyond. It has now become a social experience. But when we do, what I want to know is, how do we divide our attention between watching whatever's in front of me or wanting to text or wanting to say yay or whatever? And if we divide attention, what regulates our attention? I think the answer might be relevance, but I want to think a little bit more. And as I just said, in psychology, people say multitasking leads to reduced immersion. But then why do it in the first place? What do we get out of such experience? And finally, what I really want to ask is, how could a pragmatic theory help account for hows and whys of this engagement? Now, I don't have answers to these questions, but what I'm going to do for the next few slides, how am I doing with time? Okay, is to kind of indicate where I might be going with this. And I'd like to see your input on that. Another few things I have to ask is, do they know their fellow viewers, and does it matter? In case of Twitter, we saw so many people just commenting #strictly without tagging their friends. So obviously, this is very public discourse. Does it matter? Netflix party, you may know who you invited. The YouTube live I showed you, that is an example from a band, and fans often know each other. Okay, so they may or may not know each other, but when I was watching, I didn't know any of them. Okay, and other question is, such interaction, does it impact their interpretation of the media product itself and enjoyment as a result? And if so, how do we define enjoyment, and how do we measure enjoyment in relevant theory terms? Okay. Now I'm pretty conscious of time. Okay, right. So direction study, this is my current thinking. Relevant theory can explain how viewers process the media content and interaction with fellow viewers as two separate communicative situations they're in. And interaction with the fellow viewers will feed into the context in which viewers process the media content. Because whatever they're talking, they go back to the media, it's interrelated. So their cognitive environment will be still linked. Well, linked to that. Oh, hold on, that's a stupid thing to say. It's within the same context. So it will be feeding into each situation. And both communicative situations make this constant dynamic contribution to revising cognitive environment. Now, having said that, I was at Tim's talk earlier, and that got me thinking, like, I really have to think about this very carefully, and I have to go back to visit his work. And interaction with fellow viewers have potential to function as a highlighting device. You may have missed something, but if they say it's a virtual golf bar, and then you might say, oh, that's something I have to think. Whether consciously or subconsciously, these comments might work as a highlighting device for your interpretation of another media product. But then the question really is, how do we explain what we get out of experience? How do we divide attentions? I've been saying this too many times. Now, to answer this question, I have started to work with my colleague in University College Dublin, Brendan Rooney, who is from social cognition. And we are trying to see if the ideas from social cognition and evolutionary psychology could help explain these phenomena. In psychology, people have looked at entertainment, and there's quite substantial literature. I wouldn't say I have read it all, but from my understanding is that the reason why we engage in entertainment activity has two reasons. The proximal cause is a widening predisposition for the exploration, challenge, and play released by and as a response to boredom. So it's basically searching for something to do. The distal cause is the evolved function of organization of various adaptive activities and states of mind. So there are two things. One is the sort of created by boredom. The other is sort of training kind of reason. And Tan 2008 in particular says emotion is what is at the center, the core of entertainment experience. Let's see what he says. So Tan has this idea of dual awareness. For him, emotion is functional and it serves adaptive purposes, consisting of appraisal of situation in terms of concerns and possibility for action. And it also has the tendency to act, accompanied by the changes in information processing and body states, and the feeling state that is subjective awareness of the situation as appraised, action, and bodily states. And he says this emotion that consists of appraisal and so on is the mechanism that fills the gap between distant cause and of entertainment activity, organizational need, and the proximal cause, the immediate experience of entertainment. It's kind of, they're triggered by boredom. What he says is there are two spaces in our mind. Sorry, before that. Tan says that there are two classes of emotions that forms entertainment experience. So he says emotion is the core of entertainment experience, and there are two classes. One is interest appreciation and imagination-based emotion. What he says is then there are two mental spaces that allows us to engage in entertainment. On the one hand, there is entertainment space where the scenario is treated as though it is real. So basically, this is where we engage in the film, for example, or TV program. It is placed in the executive space, but it's not, it's only the part of it. But what you have to think is this entertainment space is separate executive space, because executive space is where it is connected to the real world, where we see things just as fiction or whatever. So these two spaces, although it's sort of kind of overlapping, we go between these two spaces, entertainment space and executive space, to process. So what we are thinking, me and Brandon are thinking now, is this interaction with fellow viewers and consuming or engaging in media products could be explained in these two spaces. On the one hand, the interaction with fellow viewers takes place in the executive space, while engagement with the media contents takes place in the entertainment space. But still, there is a question: what regulates the fluctuation of our attention between them? Tan, 2008, and psychological scholars do talk about the limit of awareness. So he says there are lower limit of awareness of executive space, because meaning that we will have to at least have minimal awareness, because executive space is where we construct the entertainment space, and that's where we that's what serves as safe fallback option, and that's where we appraise the production and other contents. And upper limits depends on how engaged we are, focused we are with the media products. But they still don't explain how, then they explain minimum and maximum, but they don't explain how we go in between. So what I'm thinking now is probably that's where relevance theory can come in. And maybe we could explain it this way. I will finish in 5 minutes, okay? So this kind of shared viewing behavior is, it's kind of strange in a way, because why do we do that? But I think what we do, we have this activity in two spaces, entertainment space and executive space, but they are interrelated. So overall enjoyment will come from the activities from two spaces. So when the psychology scholar said multitasking will reduce the enjoyment, yes, that's true, but they were only talking about one part of the picture. Okay, so they weren't talking about the other side. And what I think now is maybe we could consider relevance to individual as the sort of principle that account for the way we divide our attention. As I said, psychology scholars set the lower and upper limit of the awareness of executive space, but perhaps relevance could explain how exactly we divide our attention from one to the other. In interaction with fellow viewers, why do they do this? Still, again, that's another question. Sorry, I'm asking too many questions without answering in this talk. So if you came to get the answer today, you're not so lucky, but this is a kind of early stage. But why do they still interact with fellow viewers? And going back to this appraisal thing, maybe that's where they can check their appraisal against others, confirming the appropriateness, their feeling or reaction, which could enhance their emotion. Whether they do so consciously or subconsciously, I think I have to do a lot of thinking on this. And I would quite like to go back to Tim's talk today on this. Because as you saw, during of the strictly, people weren't saying that much, but they were saying a lot of interjections and other more expressive comments than writing long paragraphs. And same with the Japanese one, you saw a lot of emojis and so on. So again, maybe this interaction with fellow viewers will confirm it is okay to feel that way, or confirm that others are feeling that way. That would enhance their emotions. And I think what as I mentioned earlier, relevance theory's dynamic view of context explains how assumptions added from different spaces, from interaction with fellow viewers or from the media products they're watching, will feed into our inferential process while we process one of these stimuli simultaneously, if you will. And maybe the attraction of multi-screen behavior lies in a way it allows for cognitive and social experience simultaneously, while input from both activities constantly feed into each other. Now I listed so many questions here, and the question is, where do I go from this? And I think, of course, I have to sort of tighten the theoretical part. As I said, this is very new, but I would also like to have more empirical support for what they're doing. So what I am thinking about doing now is behavioral observation. I'd actually like to observe how viewers engage from outside, just to see how they actually engage in these media products. And maybe at the same time, we do eye tracking to measure engagement and cognitive load. And if we do this, we can conduct post-task interview and walk through their own behavior and do some interview. Although subjective, it could help. And maybe this GSR or facial expression analysis to measure arousal or their actual emotions as well. But one thing I haven't done at all is the linguistic side. So also would like to do the corpus analysis to get insight in what they're actually talking about. And if possible, mapping the timelines of media contents to viewer interaction corpus. I don't know if that's possible. We probably need to get quite massive data specialists here. But if we could map these, we may be able to see what they're talking while what's on the screen. I think we need to see sort of interaction between the two communication situations. So I would very much welcome if you have any suggestions on this. And yeah, so this is, again, as I said, still very, very early stage. And I have more questions than answers. But what I know for now is the way we engage in media is changing or has changed. And we seem to get a lot out of dividing our attentions and engaging in two interrelated but separate communications. I'd like to find out how these interact and what we get out of this and where we, what do we get out of this? So that's the big question. But thank you for listening. And yeah, I very much welcome any suggestion, question, criticism, or just to tell me to stop doing this and do something else, whatever you like. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ryoko. So we'll open the floor to questions. Put your hand up, on mic, put it in the chat, and you have your hand up. Great.
Oh, thank you very much, Ryoko. That was really very interesting.
Thank you.
So one of the questions you've set yourself is to try to figure out, what the text is at certain moments, or what the comments are at certain moments of the media, if it's a film or whatever. And that I had a question for you. In these YouTube live things where people are watching the YouTube video and then leaving comments, and as you mentioned, people might, that was live when comments are first put up, but people can go back after the event and watch the YouTube thing. Will those comments replay in the order in which they were posted at that point?
Oh,
or will the chat just keep scrolling?
I think it will still. Oh, okay. I think you might be separate at that point. So it might, when it is live, when you're watching, it will be on the right or left, whichever your screen is. Right. But when you go back to archive, it might be in a different place, so it might not appear the same place. But it's quite often, and then you can also change the order. You could say newest first or most relevant. So viewers will have some control over what they see.
Right. The reason I asked is because if you watch Korean TV dramas on a platform called Viki, you can turn on viewer comments while you're watching. And of course, the point is that whenever you watch it and you turn on comments, you will see comments that seem to be pertaining to the scene you're watching, but could have been posted like years ago. And of course, you just keep adding. So eventually the chat could be quite rich, but you've got no guarantee that when you see a comment come up on the screen that a person was right there, right then commenting. It could have been somebody who watched the video 6 months ago. And that would be really good for you, because you could, the comments would keep getting richer and richer, but they would all be keyed to a particular scene. So you could connect comments very easily to.
I forgot about the existence of Viki. Yes, it's a fan-driven website. And especially fans like to really share their thoughts and so on. So as you said, 6 months later, you may have a lot more, much richer data as well. So the question is, would such input change the way we watch something? So that's something I really would like to find out. So thank you. I will definitely visit Viki again.
I know that I think on Facebook Live and those kind of videos, if you replay them, the messages and the reactions pop up at the time that they were posted in the video, I think. So it might be worth thinking about that kind of those media as well, those kind of live broadcasting where people are interacting as people are. It's the one to many, and yet people are reacting like an audience. Fabrizio.
Thank you, Ryoko. I think you know what I'm about to say, but what you talked about reminded me of subtitles. And I've thought about it a long time, and I just want to share this thought. I think there's in subtitles as well as in translated subtitles for films, etc. There's also an information overload, this kind of limited dual awareness that you're talking about, I think can be translated to the reading subtitles, in my view. And this information overload, to me, brings to limited meta-representational capacities and abilities as well. And I think it's one of the points that you mentioned in the end, after all, isn't it? So there's a limitation in meta-representational abilities, basically, when you are overstimulated. And I think, I don't know whether it's right or wrong in the case of text on screen or subtitles. There is, in this limiting the meta-representational abilities, I think it's hard to apply Sperber's 1994 3 strategies in pragmatic interpretation. Like, how can you tell if somebody is like a naive optimist, a cautious optimist, or a sophisticated understander, if you have multiple inputs, and that can add to your research? I have no answers whatsoever. I'm just drawing these parallelisms and because I see them, but I have no answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a very good point. And yeah, I have to think. Thank you. I will definitely think about that. Yeah.
Agnieszka.
Hi, thanks, Ryoko. Thank you so much for your interesting presentation. And what I would like to share with you is that I've heard these terms like Generation Y, Generation C, Generation Z, and I thought I didn't really know what it means, but I think I got the idea of what generation is, particularly thanks to your presentation. Because this is, I think, what it involves, right? Like a genuine combination of live interaction, yes, via some medium. So I think that this is what it really means when the real life discourse and the media discourse are combined and become indistinguishable. Yeah. And I'm also wondering, because we talk about the interpretive abilities and how these messages are actually processed and received. Well, it seems to me, it's just my intuition, that it's not so much about the receiving end, but mostly about expressing yourself. Like you yourself pointed out, some of the comments are sort of uninformative. Yeah. Right, they just repeat. So I think it's more about the ability to express yourself and just share your response, your emotional response to what's going on, because, well, it doesn't matter so much whether anybody reads it or not, right? The speed the comments move, makes it hard to follow, really. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Agnieszka. Yes, exactly. And that's kind of relevant to what I was thinking as well. In some cases, the purpose of actually watching something together seems to be not about the film itself, but about the interaction. But at the same time, they don't even care if someone's reading your own comments. So it's more about joining in, saying something as part of the gang seems to be and like these sort of very popular established film could be Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings, or sometimes people just get together to watch for the 11th time or 30th time, and so they know exactly what's to come next. So in that case, they may not have to pay that much attention to the film anymore, but they are more interested in saying what they want to say or quickly glancing what others are saying. So I think one of the things I will have to do is to compare the audience, sort of get some group to watch something they have watched, they're familiar with, and then they're fans of. And on the other hand, we could have a group watching something brand new and see if they engage in this interaction as well. So that again came to my mind just now. Thank you.
Cool. I have loads of things I want to say and ask, but I'm trying not to monopolise it, and I can always grab you after this session. But as no one else has got their hand up at the moment, I'm gonna, oh, Billy, put your hand up. Because Billy's been running some watch-along film things on Twitter, maybe.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Billy on that.
Oh, okay. I mean, actually, my thoughts were, first of all, about differences amongst different people. So why some people like multitasking and some don't. My second thought was about what it does to you when you share the experience as opposed to not. So I've had experiences of films people have told me were funny, and I watched them at home and they were horrific. So there's one called Man Bites Dog. I don't know if you've heard of that. But basically somebody's terrorizing people and killing them. And we had a headache for 3 days after we watched it at home. But people thought it was a funny film in the cinema. And I'll chuck in the thing about the linguists at the movies, which is, it's a nightmare if your job is to be the person commenting for me, because I can't watch the film and comment at the same time. And it makes a difference what device I'm doing on. If I've got a screen I'm looking at and a separate one I'm typing on, then it's okay. But I kind of think something like the YouTube thing might be a better way for us to be doing that rather than doing it on Twitter. So none of those things are questions, but you can treat any of them like a question if you want. I mean, I suppose they're questions in that I'm curious about. I assume people have done research on why we have different responses when we watch together. But do they do stuff about the details of how it moves from this is funny to sorry, but the other classic one is something's not funny because you didn't see it with other people. You need somebody else giggling next to you to make it funny.
Yeah, I think different people like different taste and different mood as well. You know, if you watch the horrific film, like maybe 3 days later, you might have found it hilarious.
Not the one I'm talking about.
Okay.
For me.
Yeah, but yeah, I think I said this in some elsewhere. There's a film, sort of cult-ish film that's so well known as really great comedy, and with Nair and I can't stand the film. It angers me, like with murderous feeling. So again, I can totally understand why different people. So that's why I was thinking about when I look at how people go between two situations and what regulates. I'm not sure if we could have a universal regulator, if you will.
Yeah.
It will have to be tailored individual or universal regulator that accounts for the individual differences. And therefore I'm thinking relevance obviously is the what I'm thinking about, but relevance in or individual in particular I'm looking at. But yeah, I think I could completely agree with you. We're going to have to look at the different people and what you mentioned, Aniska, earlier about different generations. That would feed into different people and so on. So the way I do something will be different to someone who is 20 years younger than me.
I guess maybe one of the things I'm thinking is that some of the differences, we've got pretty clear ideas why. Like if you're interested in X and you get a lot of X, then you're happier. We also know that people often, if their expectations are raised, they don't like it so much when they see it. And if they're lowered in advance, they like it more because they thought it wasn't going to be good. I'm wondering if we might get surprising results about there being more commonality than we think if we start comparing things like what's the effect of doing this with it as opposed to that with it. Even though that, there's always going to be different tastes of what people like and what they don't, but how different are we in terms of the details of what the differences are, it seems to me. I haven't said that clearly.
That's, yeah. So yeah, it could be the platform or could be anything, I suppose. Yeah, maybe that's something I need to constant and control in the experimental environment.
Yeah. It's going to be complicated experiments though, isn't it? These are going to be really hard to design and run.
Yeah, but I'm looking forward to it. So I don't know exactly what I would use, and I do have my eye tracker, so that makes sense, but I would need glasses eye tracker rather than my mobile eye tracker. So if anyone has a glasses eye tracker, please let me know, and I come to borrow actually. But yeah, but again, it's not like fear or any strong feeling where it's sort of easier to measure the arousal, because when we are watching or smiling, there won't be that much physiological reaction.
Yeah.
So it's going to be quite difficult to design. But yeah, thank you. Very.
Thanks.
Okay. I'm going to say a couple of things. So I do this, but I do this in a very passive way. Like, so if I'm watching a TV program, and I may have just been watching a reality program slightly obsessively, I do log on to Twitter, but I don't post about it, but I do want to see what other people are saying about it. And I was thinking, is there something about the type of TV programs that this happens in? So it kind of seems, for me, it seems to happen in kind of reality TV shows, things that are very time sensitive, like Become Dancing, and things like Question Time or politics shows, but that are very time sensitive. Unless it's kind of that organised event like that Billy's run, where everyone agrees in advance to sit down and do it. And I was thinking about when you talked about the ideas from your colleague of those different, I can't remember what they were called now, the two different
executive space and entertainment space. Yeah,
so it kind of reminded me a bit of some ideas that Deirdre Wilson's talked about when thinking about drama and literature in terms of internal relevance and kind of external relevance. And I've written a bit about that in one of my chapters. But this idea that when we're watching a play or a film, we're processing the kind of internal relevance between the characters, who's saying what to whom, but we're also thinking about how what goes on might have relevance outside in our own lives. So, are we learning a moral lesson from this? Are we entertained by it? Those kind of external effects. Why are we being shown this story? Is there a significance in that? And I was thinking maybe there's something about when I watch a reality TV show on my own, I process the information and I get my cognitive effects, and I know that character's done this and that character's done that. But if I stop there, then I can't really do anything more with those effects. But then if I go and read what other people are talking about, then I can start to feel, oh, okay, that my interpretation of that was justified. People agree with me. I've got the moral high ground that I'm judging that character like this, and I want to see that my interpretation aligns with the interpretation of other people, and it kind of reinforces my interpretation, I think, and kind of helps me to derive perhaps that external relevance of not just, oh, those two characters have done X and Y and I've forgotten about it, but actually, like taking moral standpoints or reflecting on my own experience and that kind of thing. I don't know. And I think maybe that's why people do things, have always done things like had reading groups, because reading a novel on your own is one thing, but reading it and having a shared reading experience and being able to talk about the characters and the themes is allows you to take it to that extra level of interpretation. So I think there might be something around the work on comprehension and interpretation that Deirdre's done that might apply here.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that definitely sounds very, very relevant. Yeah, but what's interesting and maybe crucial, may not be crucial difference is reading group, for example, you don't read together while talking. The synchronicity seems to be different. Maybe that's to do with the generational difference, because I sometimes find it very difficult. I do see, but if I type too much, I can't focus anymore. But
I think, obviously there's that difference there, but it's also what the technology affords, isn't it?
Yeah, and what we're used to as well.
Yeah, and some people will be more open to that now. But maybe one of your questions was, why do we do this? And I wonder if the motivation might be the same to join a book group as it is to jump on Twitter during the ad break and discuss, who's been doing what with whom. Yeah,
and I completely agree with you about the sort of confirming what I thought, and everyone's thinking the same way. So yes, I'm right, or these. Sort of it does impact on, it gives you support that you're not wrong, your reaction is right, so you're not crazy for thinking they're crazy or whatever. So yeah, I think I completely agree with you there as well. And does it let us enjoy it more or not? Probably going into more Tim's territory, but that's another thing I'm thinking about.
I mean, I think it does. I think it does for me. I think there's that kind of like, well, I think there's a lot of people in the chat have been talking about humor and shared experience and going to the theatre or the film together. And I think maybe as you said, particularly during the pandemic, if I'm watching something on my own, then yeah, it's the closest you can get to that sense, isn't it?
Yeah.
Angelica.
Hi, well, you gave me so much to think, and I was comparing some evaluations I have been doing, particularly with my own kids, because, for example, both my daughter and my son, they always interact, and I think what I have been seeing, of these last few years with them, it's not so much because they want to confirm or compare. They want to be part of, I don't know if there's instinct that I have about younger people, especially younger than 18 years old. The way their attention functions is almost like an adaptation to the overstimulation we have, because, people who are older like me and, most of us here, we weren't born with the internet. We didn't have the tools, and they were born with these tools. So because they have these tools, they are not happy enough about receiving content. They want to be part of the content. And that's why sometimes you are saying those examples where people are just repeating what is on the screen. And it goes so much further, that they're always doing things. And in the last few years, I have had so much work that I started working with 2 computers. And for example, even me now, I have 3 computers in front of me. And depending what's going on, I use the 3 of them more or less at the same time. If I'm watching something that the content, I'm familiar with, so I don't need to employ so much attention. So even if it's a conference or a lecture, if I'm familiarized with, I do something else. I sometimes even write while I'm reading and listening. And this goes a little bit with what Billy Clark was saying, that some people can actually do more things. And we find this so often in young people, because I observe them so much, and they're so used to interaction. In our university now, we started a course online, and the way the students receive presence is they go in the forum and they can write anything. They can write hi, and the system, recognizes as a presence. And they are watching the class and they are writing so much. So I can see, this younger generation, they need to interact. They are not satisfied, even if they don't get anything out of it. And sometimes even if nobody's going to read that, but they printed out their mark there. I don't know if you find this too much far-fetched or interesting.
Thank you, Angelica. Yeah, like as you said, and as Kate said as well, it's very much affordance. The generations born with the internet, and its technology is there to do, so they naturally do that as well. And now that we have these, like I have 3 screens in front of me as well, including my phone, and again, we naturally go between. So the question really to think about is what's so new and what's not new. Some of the, I just saw in the chat, some people saying, oh, some of the crap emoji and so on is the same as audience in the live theater going like giving a round of applause, for example. So again, we have to see what I need to really carefully observe is what's new, what's not new, and if it's not new, it still doesn't mean that it's not within our interest. So how do we then enhance, explain this as one whole experience? I don't know where I'm going with this, but yeah, so yeah, thank you. There's so many interesting comments and questions. I think I have a little bit better idea where I'm going. So in a way, so watch this space. I'm hoping that the paper will be written by autumn, so, and maybe published in 3 years' time.
Thank you, fascinating discussion. Thank you again, Ryoko, for your presentation. I believe you'll be presenting something similar in a month's time in Seville.
Yes,
Right?
we are, yeah.
Which is the reason why we don't have a meeting next month, because it overlaps with the EPICS conference in Seville, which I will certainly be at, even though the program says that I'm not, but I am. I'm going to be there. So we won't have a meeting next month, but we will reconvene for, I think, the final one of this term in June.
Yeah.
So we'll send out emails around that.
And hopefully we can do some interesting announcement in our June meeting.
Yeah, I'm hoping we've got plans for something a bit bigger in the autumn.
Yeah.
So thank you. I'm just going to stop the recording now. Thank you all.